Hello chess friends and welcome to Zadov's chess channel and welcome to the round 2 of the Lindores Abbey Rapid challenge in 2020, which is organized by the world champion Magnus Carlsen. So far we are having, I think, a great tournament, not too many draws. That's why I really like this rapid format. Many mistakes are happening, but also many great tactical battles are happening, so this is all we are searching for when we watch chess games, of course. And from the round 2 I wanted to show you a great game played by Alexander Grischuk against young Krzysztof Duda. So Alexander Grischuk is Russian, young Krzysztof Duda is Polish, so both of them, if we watch maybe the history of the world, are Slavs. I'm a Slav too, because I'm from Croatia, so this is really a Slavic battle commentated by a Slav in the Slav defense that has been played now in the game. And I think this is really a great game, which shows really the flexibility sometimes of the Slav defense. Will also show a great positional understanding by Alexander Grischuk. He played, I think, a very important line, and it's really an instructive game for those who have troubles to play against the Slav defense. This will be a perfect video, I think. So let's check out what happened. We have here d4 played by the Slav Alexander Grischuk. The other Slav, young Krzysztof Duda, responded with the move d5, and we have now c4. We have the Slav defense with the move c6, and now knight to f3. We have knight to f6, and now e3. Knight to c3 is also a possibility. When I play against the Slav defense, I most often play this move knight to c3, but it could lead maybe sometimes into a complicated line with d takes c4, which is the check variation. So you may get annoyed with this check variation. So here Grischuk goes into a more flexible line with the move e3, and young Krzysztof Duda responded with move e6. We have bishop to d3. What I want you to point you out here is this move order that Alexander Grischuk has prepared here. He doesn't play with his knight on b1. He stays with his knight very long on the starting square. I'll show you why he does it. Here, after bishop to d3, the common idea of the Slav defense is to play d takes c4. So the idea behind this move is, after bishop takes c4, okay, what white has here as a position advantage is this 2 versus 1 pawn central control. So it means white has 2 pawns in the center, black has only 1 pawn in the center, which is, from a strategical point of view, an advantage for white. But black's idea, on the other hand, is, after potential bishop takes c4, that happened of course in the game, is to play the move b5. So black will gain many tempos on the bishop. So black will gain 2-3 tempos on the bishop, because this is sort of a compensation for the pawn central control that white has here. But okay, here young Krzysztof Duda tried a different way with knight to d7, still with the flexibility to, if the position if the position allows it, to play the move b5. And here Grischuk simply castled kingside. So we have bishop to d6 with the preparation to play the move e5. And here a very important move by Alexander Grischuk is to play the move queen to c2. So I think most of us would try something like knight to c3, then maybe e4, and then e5. So, but there is a huge difference if you play, for instance, the move knight to c3 or the move knight from b to d2. I'll show you how great of a positional understanding Alexander Grischuk has, because he played now, as I said, queen to c2 with preparations to play e4, because this queen is also supporting the e4. With the knight to c3 you have the same idea, but as I said, you see the problems if you play the move knight to c3. So here, castling, we have e4, e5. After bishop to e3, we have queen to c7, and now h3 by Grischuk prevents some knight to g4 ideas. And here young Krzysztof Duda tried a simplified line. He tried e takes d4 after bishop takes d4. Okay, you get your square h6. The main idea is now to trade off here more pieces on the square e5, and here finally knight to d2. This is a very important move, as this knight is sort of a reloading system. Then we want to place our knight again on f3, not on c3, because that wouldn't be possible, of course. So that's why I think this queen to c2 idea was a great positional move by Grischuk, because now after rook to e8 we have rook to e1, and now knight to e5, bishop takes, knight takes e5, queen takes e5, and now comes This very important moment of the game, because now Grischuk has a tempo on the queen, knight to f3. So if this knight would stay on the c3, then this tactic wouldn't be possible. Now the queen has to retreat, and now after queen to h5 we have e5. So there is always this thing about isolated pawns. So sometimes in chess isolated pawns are bad, but sometimes, like in this occasion, I think this isolated pawn is simply great, because this is a rolling pawn, it's a supported pawn, it's supported by the rook and the knight, so it creates a space advantage on the 5th rank. So although this pawn is isolated, it's not the weakness in the position, it's basically our main attacking formation. So here, after the move e5, Duda has basically no good squares to retreat with the knight. Knight to d5 doesn't bring you so much. I think we can simply take, and this pawn would be on the light square. After bishop to e6, the bishop would be blocked out by its own pawn. So that's why Duda had to play knight to h7, and now here is the tactic that Grischuk has prepared, a great tactic, because e6 is an opening move. After bishop takes e6, it's not the point that we wanted to trade off the bishops, because rook to e5 was Grischuk's preparation. Now the queen is endangered, basically the queen is trapped. What you can do is to play queen to g6 or knight to g5. The problem after queen to g6 is that we simply take the queen. After f takes g6, we simply win a piece. So that's why you see the queen doesn't have good squares. You have to play the move knight to g5. You have to cover the queen on the 5th rank, but now knight takes g5 forces young Krzysztof Duda to take with the pawn, h takes g5, because taking the bishop is not an option here. You get checkmated, queen to h7, king to f8, and now queen to h8 is game over here for black. So that's why you have to create this double pawn situation after h takes g5, and now here rook to e1. Great move by Grischuk, playing on the spinning idea. White has really a domination on the board. Here, what to do from black's perspective: you're pinned. The young Krzysztof Duda tried rook to e7 with preparations to play rook to e8, somehow covering everything. Here, f4. Grischuk is continuing to push, and here queen to h4, and now we have f5. This was the winning move, I think, for Alexander Grischuk, because the queen has, of course, this check, king to h1. Okay, you can take the bishop, but now Alexander Grischuk simply takes the rook and has, of course, a better position. He's up the exchange. What the only maybe idea for black to get a draw here, or maybe a win, is to play the move bishop to d5. Of course, with the idea to play something like queen to h4, then with some tactical threats with queen to h3. This is, of course, preventable. You can defend against this, but one of the main ideas how to maybe make a draw here is to create sort of a pass pawn situation. If you manage to do this, if you create maybe a 3 versus 1 situation here on the queen side, then this game could be dangerous again for white. But Grischuk simply played on a simplification idea: rook to e8, rook takes e8, king to h7, and now queen to e2. He found again good tactics in order to simplify the position, because we're up the exchange. We should really simplify the position, not go into complicated lines. Queen to e2 with preparations, of course, to play queen to h5, checkmate, queen to h4, and now queen to g4. A very nice move. No checks are possible. Everything is covered here. The rook is covering, of course, the e1, and it forces now young Krzysztof Duda to trade off the queens, because now when we evaluate this position after rook to e7, one of these pawns will be lost. Here b5 was played, and now rook takes a7. From an endgame's perspective, this is, of course, game over for white, but let's see how the game went on. Bishop to d5, we have b4, very important move. Never allow this pawn to be moved, and we have now also this backward pawn, which is, of course, a weakness. The bishop is always stuck to the defense of this pawn on c6. f6 played by Duda. We have rook to d7, king to g8, and now king to g1. We want to play, of course, much more active with our king. King to f2, bishop to e4, and now rook to c7. Again, never allow this bishop to play freely. Bishop to d5, and now g3, getting out of this light square mess. Here king to g8 was played, and now here Alexander Grischuk simply plays much more actively with his king. After rook to d6, basically, again, Duda made sort of a mistake, because he has to play the move bishop to c4. So far, it's not possible to take because you lose simply the rook after bishop to d5. So that's why king to e3 had to be played. But okay, Duda tried again with some moves like bishop to b3. If you try, I think here immediately bishop to d5 again, I think if even we can even sacrifice the exchange here and simply go after this pawn, then after this one, and we'll create a pass pawn situation. So this was really game over after this move, bishop to b3. Here Grischuk simply took another pawn. We have king to h7, but now again this very important idea, rook to c5, bishop to a4. Again, if you try bishop to c4, white can simply take. Here after b takes c4, we'll create a pass pawn. We can always catch up with this pawn if black tries to push with c3, c2. So that's why here bishop to a4. But now the king can play more freely. After rook to c7, you see you have to move the king again. And after f takes g6, basically it's really game over. Bishop to b3. Okay, king to c5. Again, this idea to simply give up the rook here for the pawn and the bishop, and then again create this pass pawn situation. In this position, the Slav young Krzysztof Duda resigned against another Slav, of course, Alexander Grischuk. So I hope that you enjoyed this Slavic duel. It was really a great pleasure for me. Grischuk played really a great game, although he lost in the first round against Magnus Carlsen. But okay, Magnus is Magnus. You can lose, of course, a game against Magnus Carlsen. We'll see how Grischuk will continue in this tournament. Young Krzysztof Duda is not playing very well. He lost the first two games. Has to really improve if he wants to make something happen in this tournament. Meanwhile, you can watch my other commented chess games so far. Here's the link, and you can also watch my best chess games of all time if you want to see the best chess games that have been ever played in chess history. See you soon with some more videos, and chess is the best, of course.